Welcome to the Truth About Employed Physicians podcast, a weekly show where we take you behind the scenes of the professional healthcare industry and reveal the little-known methods highly successful physicians, doctors, and professionals are executing right now to maximize their income, reduce their financial liabilities, and most importantly, regain the freedom to live their lives on their terms. Subscribe to the Truth About Employed Physicians podcast today so you don't miss a single episode of this highly valuable information from our host, a veteran physician with more than 20 years in practice and counting. Now, your host, Dr. Incorporated.
But yeah, there is a lot required of you, and I think it creates blind spots, honestly. I know for me, and a blind spot is hard for you to even say what a blind spot is in your life because, well, that's the nature of it. It's a blind spot. You don't even know it exists. I think for a lot of medical students and even into residency and even attending physicians, because of this whole process and because of the intensity of it and the intense focus, we tend to underdevelop some of the skills that are necessary to manage life like the rest of the world. And whether that be our financial underdevelopment, whether that be our social relationship underdevelopment, social skills, even our physical health, I think, becomes neglected a little bit, becomes underdeveloped because of the sacrifice needed. Yeah. Have you found yourself sometimes kind of feeling like you're a little blind in some areas?
I think that's definitely true. Just, I think for me, I've never been the huge social life person. And so for me, that's not as big of a deal. I think for my wife, it is more so. She's more cares about having a social life, and I can just have a couple close friends and call it a day. Yeah. But I think the physical health is the thing that's the most challenging, of just finding the time in the day to work out. Mm-hmm. Kind of throughout my whole life, I pretty much worked out or did some sort of activity or played a sport pretty much just about every day. Yeah. And now it's like if I am not scheduling it into my day, it's not going to happen. There's just not enough hours, and I can see the difference in my functioning when I haven't worked out for a couple months because I got caught up in my internal medicine clerkship, and it was just, 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on top of the studying, and you don't have time to work out, and I think that's for me the biggest one. But it's also a priority to me as well. So yeah, I have to make time for that. Who am I? I can't point at anyone else and say, "Oh, you made me not do this or that." It's more like, well, if I have something I was going to do, I needed to make it happen. But
push come to shove, the intensity that's required. I mean, frankly,
when you're going to sacrifice something, it's like, am I not going to see my wife at all for the next 2 months, or am I going to not work out?
Yeah, right. And so
I guess I'm not working out.
First rank order that you really do sort of find yourself in that position. I'll have to compliment you on the fact, though, that you were wise in your adaptive processes by marrying an accountant. So if you thought that you were going to have some financial blind spots, you compensated for that by, choosing to marry an accountant. Right. That's pretty smart, actually. Mm-hmm. That was good on your part. Not every doctor can choose that wisely, but I think that'll work out in your favor. I do.
It's like a banker marrying a lawyer.
There you
Doctor
go.
Marrying a accountant.
Right, yep, that's right. But as you went through undergrad even, and you didn't meet your wife-to-be till a little later in your college career, relatively speaking. But, did you find it hard to interact with other, I guess, to look for a girlfriend, to look for relationships because you felt like you didn't have this much of a social life or as much time to sort of pursue it? Or even now when you look at, say, some of your unmarried peers in medical school, and they're like, that'd be great to have a social life, but I don't have time to go look for people.
Yeah. I think undergrad wasn't a problem.
Okay.
There's plenty of time, and I mean, it's a commitment, but not you make time for those things. You have time to make time, and it's a lot easier. But now, I definitely, when I look at my colleagues who are would like to find a significant other, Like, I don't know how they could do it, because there's hardly time to create that social life to truly get to know someone well enough to know, do you want to spend the rest of your life with them, and or do you even just want to date them regularly, because your schedule is so irregular that who knows, you're available for 3 months and then you're doing away rotations for 2 months and you don't see them for 2 months, and just like that, whatever you might have had fades away. And so I definitely don't envy those people who are in that situation, going through medical school or residency.
Do you see most of them, like say in medical school right now, sort of almost hitting the pause button, just by definition? They're like, you know what, I'm not even going to worry about this right now.
Yeah, I think that's the majority. Is kind of, it's either they're desperately looking to try to go ahead and find someone before they get to residency, or the majority, 90%, I feel like, are just kind of like, I don't think I'm going to be able to have a significant relationship during this time period. Something falls in my lap, I'll take it, but I don't have the capacity or the fuel available in my burners to prioritize that right now. They're putting it all towards their education, just like.
Of course, that follows the cultural drift right now, though, too, of delaying marriage till a little bit later in life. I mean, it all kind of fits into that process as well, I believe. And so even when I was in medical school, that was still a thing. The minority of us were married when we were in medical school. The majority were unmarried, and even those hardly ever got married during medical school. I was an exception. You're an exception, but it's because we knew those people before you got there.
I don't know anyone who has met someone during medical school and got married during medical school. It's always, they knew them before, got married during, because how the timing of things worked out, but no one who was... we met each other first year med school and we got married fourth year in med school or something like that. Just you don't really see that.
So you're part of Generation Z. Are you part of?
I'm right on the line.
Okay, so you could consider yourself either one.
It's like 1995, so it's like right.
Yeah. So your generation, what we can call it, either one, millennial or Generation Z. How do you think your generation views the life of a doctor any differently than, say, what you've seen me view life as a doctor as? You grew up watching a dad who was a baby boomer, right on the edge of being a baby boomer, but a baby boomer's view of medicine being X. I mean, it has been my identity. It's been my whole everything of who I was. It required that from me, and I've continued to sort of live in that vein. But I don't think most millennials or Generation Zers sort of embrace medicine the same way that I do. Do you think it's different?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a greater prioritization of balance, much more about having a life outside of medicine, much more about maybe a means to an end rather than being the end.
So I've heard people in the physician fire movement talk about medicine being a means to an end, right? To get to the point where you can retire early, the fire movement. Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about when you say that, or is there really other things that you're talking about?
It's hard to say. I think probably that's part of it, of the fire, maybe financial independence, retire early, but I think more of just people who are striving. I just think that there's almost like an identity crisis. If people don't know who they are, they don't know what they want, but they want to go live life. They want to travel around. It's like people feel like this generation is like trying to find itself. And so having the means of a physician gives them the ability to go
the opportunity.
Do that, right? Having the funds and maybe some of the time off. I think physicians have more time off for sure than the average worker, and so there's some ability to do those do some of those things. And I don't know, I feel like for a lot of people it's more of a job and less of a calling now. than it used to be.
That makes some sense to me. I see that, and in that context, that's I think why I think we're seeing this movement towards physician employment too. Like, the most recent stats show that most graduating residents, about 90% or so, choose to be employed as opposed to kind of going into private practice or kind of going out on their own, where oftentimes that was really kind of built into your identity and sort of your purpose. But now it's a job, you go get hired for a job.
Yep.
Is that the case?
Yeah. I think it's definitely more people just working jobs now. I feel like that just accurate. There's just people want to not have to deal with all the overhead and the managing staff and all of that. They'd rather just sign a contract and get their checks every week and be able to do what they want with it. And when they're at work, they're a doctor. When they're not at work, they're whoever they want to be.
Yeah.
It feels maybe a little bit less it feels a little bit like a group that's less engaged in the community.
And I'm sure it's not to say that they don't care about people or care about the community.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
Doctors are altruistic as a whole, right?
But carrying it, using that doctor position outside of the hospital.
Yeah.
Right? Like kind of more just when I'm doing my work in the community, like that's what I'm doing. But when I'm outside,
yeah,
I'm going to be whatever I'm going to be. I don't want to have that follow me outside.
Yeah. So I have medical students and residents that do rotate with me, and I always get a chance to talk to them and get to know them and so forth. And even in the process of recruiting new doctors to join our medical group, what I see is this sort of mentality of, I like to use the term urban anonymity. And that is that a lot of, because I'm in a small community, a small town, a lot of doctors or doctors-to-be, doctors in training, and they think it's kind of an interesting gig where you're in a small town, but most of them don't want to live in a small town because they're known. There's this sense that they're known by everybody, and there's kind of no anonymity that exists for them to sort of be off.
Right.
Okay? And I've always embraced that as kind of just the doctor's life. Okay? But it's a thing, isn't it? It's a real thing among your generation and among sort of your group of young doctors that a lot of them prefer the richness of what comes in the urban life, opportunities, places to go, things to do.
I think that's the thing. Like people want it to be a job, and they don't want it to define their whole life anymore. I feel like for your generation is more. It like your job, being a doctor is who you are. It is what you are, and for people now, it's just for a lot of them, it's my job, and then outside of it, I could become something completely different.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's not really who I am. It's kind of just what I do.
Yeah. So right? is that how you're thinking?
I don't know. I feel like that's something you get to develop as you go through. I don't think that sort of happens until you're in residency. I think as you go through the training, you kind of turn yourself into what you want to be, right? So I think I'm too early still to really say. I mean, I feel like I consider it a calling to go into medicine, but I see the merits of having the balance of having it be more of a job, not fully. It's a little bit more of what you do and not who you are, but I don't know. I feel like there's a nice in-between spot, a sweet in-between spot where it's who you are. You don't try to like hide it or downplay it, but it doesn't take over your entire life. And I think that's where I want to be. Yeah. Where it's a part of my identity, but it's not all that I am or all that I'm about. There's more depth than that, right? Yeah. I feel like there's a common idea of like doctors need to be an inch deep and a mile wide. Right? Yes. Rather than
way down deep.
Rather than an inch wide and a mile deep.
Yes.
Right? They gotta have this broad little, of everything.
Well, that's a family doctor. Primary care, that's what I do.
It's part of the identity thing,
it's also part
versus
of that.
Having like more depth in terms of a more dynamic I think people want a more dynamic life now.
Interesting.
I think just as the world has grown and America has changed and things have changed, I think that it feels more possible probably than it used to.
Yeah.
As healthcare has changed, I mean, it's way more possible for people to do that than it used to.
Yeah.
Than it used to be.
So I'm not going to hold you to this, but what specialty are you interested in?
Right now, I'm planning on doing orthopedic surgery.
Okay. Easy to get into?
No, not easy.
It's not?
No.
One of the more difficult?
Well, yeah, a lot of people consider it probably one of the top 3 or 4 most difficult, up there with derm and neurosurgery and IR. So
Okay.
one of the toughest ones probably.
Gotcha.
But good things don't come easy.
Well, they don't.
So,
But that's required some sacrifice. It's probably on your mind all the time
yeah.
to get to that level then, right?
Yeah, especially going through your 3rd year medical school. There's a lot that rides on your 3rd year medical school, I feel like.
Okay.
And kind of end of 2nd year medical school between step 1, step 2, clerkship grades, evals, trying to get all the extracurricular stuff in, volunteering, research, leadership. It's just kind of...
That's a lot.
Yeah. It's like even when I'm not studying, I'm still, doing something related to that end career.
Yes,
yeah, I'm aware.
Mindful of it. It's interesting. I was fortunate enough to be AOA at IU Medical School, much like you're going to IU Medical School. Although I was pretty ignorant about what that meant and all the business that went with that. But what I did know, back in my day, all the people that wanted to go into the higher valued specialties, we often accused them of being called gunners because they were the people among our peers who would pretty much ruthlessly do anything they could to put themselves at an advantage compared to their peers so they would look better. Do gunners still exist in medicine? And is that still a thing?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you have to be a gunner in order to go into competitive specialties. I think there's gunners not going into competitive specialties, but there are definitely gunners.
And you're not one of them, though?
I wouldn't consider myself one of them. I think gunners are willing to do what it takes to get themselves where they want to be, but also willing to run over anyone in their path to do so.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm a little bit more, I'm going to do what it takes to get where I want to be, but I also want everyone else to end up where they want to be too, at least within my circle. Like, of the, anonymous other 30,000 medical students out there right now, well, to me, everyone in my class is competing with all of them. So I want everyone in my class to succeed, but those are the people I know, right? Like, you want your friends and the faces that you know.
Yeah.
I feel like it used to be a little bit more take down everyone around you, and I think I'm a little bit more, and just generally medical school culture now is a little more, everyone in our little circle succeed and try to beat the rest of the world, the rest of the medical school students or whatever, and so.
Okay.
I want to see all my buddies do well, and
I always wanted my peers to do well too, and I always liked it when they did. But it's a funny thing. You put the ultra competitive people together in groups to compete with one another at the next level, and there is a certain amount of sorting that goes on. There's a certain amount of true minor or major competition. It seems like that goes on.
Yeah.
Even if it's mental gymnastics internally where you're comparing yourself to others, it just sort of seems sort of part of the system, But then there always have been, it's interesting to hear, there still are the gunners, the ones who are sort of at all cost.
I think there's always going to be the gunners.
Yeah, I think there probably are as well. It's interesting.
There's always...
Well, kind of as we wrap up today's session, which I think has been very interesting to me, the doctor's life's a great life. I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again. I love everything about my life as a doctor. I do. It's imperfect, and generationally, I've had to sort of reconsider and reflect on some of the things, even from talking to you about how can I be a more balanced and better doctor. But I'm just very interested in you're interested in orthopedics, and what is it about the orthopedic doctor's life that makes you think, that's what I want to do?
Well, I mean, I think the orthopedic doctor's job or their task, I think, is a lot of what I like. I like working on the hands. I like the surgery.
Okay.
I think I like working with the bones rather than soft tissues. And so orthopedics kind of seems like the route as far as that goes.
Has
And
nothing to do with it. It's one of the most highly compensated specialties.
I think there's always a little bit of a bonus in that.
Okay. All right. Just interested in knowing if that influences things at all. Because
Well, I think that one of the nice things about that is, one, it gives you, with how much healthcare has moved towards employment, I think orthopedics is one of the specialties that allows you to have easily have a successful private practice.
Oh, okay.
And I'm very interested in being part of a private practice or group practice, and be part of owning like a surgery center, and
Okay.
be, I guess, part of the machine of healthcare, but not run by the machine of healthcare as much. And so
Okay.
I think that provides the opportunity. Orthopedics will provide the opportunity for the lifestyle that I want.
Gotcha.
As far as allowing me to create the balance in my life that I want. Work, be compensated appropriately for the work that I do, and use the skills that I want to develop. Those are the skills that I like, and so I think there's a lot of advantages to it. I'd recommend it.
Okay, all right. So last question, just kind of circling back around to your wife's comment. I know she's not here. Maybe I should be asking her, but I'm going to ask you anyway. And that is, your wife has said that she wishes sometimes that she hadn't married a medical student, but she'd married a doctor. And I know what she means by that, and I know what you meant by that. But I think it's an interesting point, and that's because it points back towards this very topic that we're talking about, and that is the doctor's life. And I think people look at the doctor's life.
They only see the end result.
That's right. They see the end result. And if they've not gone through the process to get there, or they don't know what it's like being in it, they sort of have a fantasy-like version or view of it, that it's great, right? That's what your wife's sort of alluding to. Like, I don't want to go through the hard stuff. I want to get to the good stuff at the end.
Yeah.
But, and again, they're like, I love my life. It's a great life. Just kind of, can you comment on what you think? You're projecting this, right? You're guessing what it's going to be like. But what part of the doctor's life do you look forward to the most?
Oh goodness, not being in school.
All right, nice.
I feel like that'll be nice. It'll be nice to actually have my wife's grandparents stop asking me when am I going to get a job.
All right,
Start making some money. When am I going to pull my weight?
Yeah, right.
And I don't know, kind of have that. I'm looking forward to having that autonomy and ownership over what I do. Of feeling a greater sense of ownership over the patients I'm taking care of, and the you're gonna have people looking over your shoulder, pretty much your whole life, but eventually you kind of you're an expert in your field, and majority of people aren't gonna be able to tell you that what you're doing is the wrong way to do X, right? When you're in surgery, the CEO of X hospital doesn't have a clue how to do surgery. They're not going to walk in and say, oh, you need to be do it like this and this. I mean, they wouldn't even think to do that because you're the expert. And I like that idea of being the expert in something eventually. And
I will remind you on that note, though, the CEO of that hospital will tell you which one of the orthopedic products that you can choose to use will be the cheaper product for them, and they'll make more money from, than the one you might choose to want to use. Did you know that's a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
And that's why you have your own little surgery center and have your group practice that does your surgeries there.
There's always a little tension that exists no matter the specialty. So that's an interesting thought.
But
well,
I think those are some of the other lifestyle things I think that being a doctor affords that are enjoyable after years of saying no to everything,
delayed
continual
gratification.
putting everything off, so
the thing. That's true. Yeah, so this is good. So, John, I really appreciate this time that you've had, and I'm looking forward to our additional discussions on a host of other subjects that I think young doctors are grappling with and older doctors grapple with as well. And for our audience out there, I think that this probably the doctor's life has maybe brought forth some ideas and thoughts that you have. I welcome your comments. John welcomes your comments, your questions. On our website at Doctor Incorporated, where you can find the truth about employed physicians. You can ask questions on our SpeakPipe that's at the website. You can engage us in a host of different ways via the podcast, via the vlog, via the blog itself. So we invite you to engage with us in this, and we'll look forward to you hearing our next episode at The Truth About Employed Physicians.